Very much. Representative Friedman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the witnesses for coming and testifying today. I represent Los Angeles, a community that has lived with the consequences of toxic chemicals in our water, our air, and our homes for decades, from PFAS and paraquat to chromium-6 and countless other pollutants. During my time in the California legislature, I authored laws banning PFAS, known as forever chemicals, from cosmetics and from children's products, which they were widely used in. I authored a bill that required an accelerated reevaluation of paraquat, a highly toxic herbicide linked to fatal poisonings and Parkinson's risks and already banned in 70 countries around the world. I banned the use of fire retardants in mattresses and the 30 most toxic chemicals already banned in the EU from personal care products like makeup. It's clear that if you live in California after these bills, you're going to be able to buy products that are safer than in many other parts of our country. And I want to add that a lot of the work that I did was bipartisan because people want to know their products are safe. And we see with the MAHA movement a growing recognition of the health impacts of some chemicals that were approved in the United States that clearly have health impacts. Now, the bills that I took were not about being against innovation, and I represent areas that have pharmaceutical research and development, that have a lot of aerospace. They're about health protections. So I agree with my colleagues that we have to support innovation. We need to be a global leader, but we also can't streamline at the cost of public health. We need strong safeguards. Now, in Los Angeles, we are constantly under the risk of drought, as you, I'm sure, are familiar. We sit on huge reservoirs under the San Fernando Valley, reservoirs that are almost unusable because of historic PFAS and other contamination. When Lockheed Martin closed its Burbank operations in the early 1990s, it was a great company that did a lot of amazing things for the United States, but it also left behind one of the worst groundwater contamination cases in the country, including chromium-6 pollution that compromised the drinking water for my city in Glendale and in Burbank and in Los Angeles. We still drink that water, but we have to filter it. And those costs are passed directly to ratepayers, making the cost of water in my communities much more expensive than in other parts of the country. Dr. Myberg, as Congress considers ways to support innovation, what specific safeguards should be strengthened to prevent future toxic chemical contamination, contamination to waterways, and how should we deal with, what do I tell my constituents as we streamline who have to pay constantly to get chromium-6 and perchlorate and other contaminants out of our drinking water, and who still say that the contaminants that are left in the water even after purification pose what they believe are an unreasonable risk and forcing some of them to buy bottled water rather than use city water?
Congresswoman, thank you for that question. And I just want to emphasize what I'm about to say now. It speaks only for myself. But that is that the issues you're phrasing are the classical issues in, excuse me, in risk evaluation. And the best thing that the agency can do is to have the best science it can get on what exposure scenarios are possible. Now, there's sort of a distribution about possible versus likely, and somewhere you have to draw a line on where that possible and likely boundary is, because you want to set up your regulation processes for new chemicals, because in addition to cleaning up the existing problems, the first thing you want to do is not create new ones. And that does require some difficult judgments, and there are judgments about which scientists disagree, both about some of the hazard information as well as about some of the exposure risk information. And you simply need to take the time to work those things through, not to get perfect consensus from everybody, but at least to engage in what you might call the weight of evidence, if you will, of what is the most likely, and then design regulations around both existing and new chemicals to minimize the likelihood that you get the kind of situations you just described. Preventing it entirely is a lot of work, but you do have to do things that reflect reasonable, not unreasonable risk, and those are the judgments that you ask the administrator to make in implementing a statute like TSCA.
And then when things do, as you say, go bad, and let's say we have an expedited review, and we just heard a suggestion of having a 60-day review in some cases, or using AI, which right now, if you see how it's functioning on the internet, I don't think that we're anywhere close to using AI to tell us what chemicals are safe. We've had situations where AI, became a Nazi, let's say. So given that, and given that we have some cases where these companies in my community are doing what they were ordered by a court to do and helping to pay for cleanup. But we have many cases where the companies are long gone. Sites of land, even in urban Los Angeles, with the value of land we have, large pieces of land are left undeveloped because the cost of developing those sites and the mitigation required are so expensive. How do we, and who pays the cost in the end for this?
The short answer is that citizens do. That scenario is precisely why the Superfund law was passed, to help remediate those kind of situations. But Superfund cleanups are a lot more expensive than prevention in the first place.
Thank you very much. I yield back.